Today I'm going to talk to you about 5 of the more unconventional health practices that you'll find among the Amish. These are not universally seen, and you'll see kind of what I mean. Amish do partake of conventional medicine, but it's one piece of a collection of practices. Just like there are many different groups of Amish, there are different approaches to how Amish take care of themselves, how they treat themselves, how they seek medical treatment and care when needed. Number 1, traveling long distance for healthcare. This is fairly common. So it's in the ballpark of medical tourism. Amish will travel to different states or even to different countries to access medical treatment. Now, sometimes that may be for cost reasons. A type of treatment might be less expensive in another country, specifically Mexico in this case, is a common destination. Or there may be treatments that they can't really get readily in the US, but may be available in other countries, maybe more experimental things. I know Amish who have gone even to Costa Rica, for example, for treatment. It could be something like cancer care. There are doctors and medical centers who advertise in Amish newspapers. One of my friend's brothers actually was treated in, I believe it was Arizona. There was a medical center there that had the type of care that the family wanted. They went there, and actually his parents accompanied him, went there by train. Family will sometimes go along. Amish people will stay in hotels on the trip. Donald Crable explained in an article in the Wall Street Journal that the trips are an opportunity for a little diversion. And he said that people who spend their lives in rural settings like to go to a motel sometimes, watch cable TV, and eat in a restaurant. So that's not the point of these trips. That's just a little additional aspect. And the Amish, I would say, are pretty open to different approaches to healthcare. And, maybe that might be a lie. The picture of the Amish is like a conservative and a very orthodox group. They'll do a lot of different things in the pursuit of health and wellness. Number 2, home remedies. This is common. So an Amish woman named Jonas Em Byler. Jonas Em would be her nickname, from the Geauga County, Ohio settlements. Amish need to have nicknames sometimes often to tell one another apart. Emma Byler wrote a book called Plain and Happy Living, Amish Recipes and Remedies. She basically compiled a lot of the natural remedies that she used, that her family used. Wild cherry bark, pig's ear leaves is another one. Dandelion. So she wrote in the book that a Swartzentruber bishop told us the lowly dandelion has some very powerful attributes. I've seen people with a handful of wards and 1 pound of dandelion leaf powder takes care of them. They drink it in a liquid mixture. I call it the poor man's medicine. That dandelion shows up throughout the book. It actually has more entries than any other item in the book. It was given as a treatment for diabetes, dropsy, as a blood purifier and cleanser, quote unquote, and for liver problems, among other ailments. I'm not here to verify or promote or confirm that it works for any of those things, but that just gives you an example of the type of natural remedies that Amish might use and some of the targeted ailments that they're used for. I've actually been the beneficiary of Amish home remedies. I had something like a flu, I had a fever, aches, no appetite. They made me some kind of concoction. It had honey, lemon, pepper, horseradish, hot pepper. It had a kick to it. The next morning, I was back on my feet. So does that mean the remedy worked? Was it just a 24-hour bug and it would have gone away anyway? There's no way to tell, right? But I have to say it felt good to at least be trying something. She also talks about her father making dandelion wine each spring. Some Amish do consume alcohol. I have a video about that. You'll commonly see it used for, quote unquote medicinal purposes. Things like vinegar. There's a plant called feverfew, which is a flowering plant in the daisy family. She recommends that to use in a tea that's sweetened with honey, and that's used for coughs, flu, and colds. But it also doubles as an insect repellent when you make it into a strong tea and spread it on the plants. It's pretty versatile. I don't know how much of this is verified, but there are reasons that people use these remedies for generations. Golden seal root, There are other products, actually, she talks about too. B&W ointment, which is an ointment that was invented by an Amishman, and that's used to treat burns. I'm not saying that all Amish are going to rely on these heavily. Some will definitely use them more than others. Probably more in your plainer communities, you're going to see that more common. But you'll often see at least a bit of some kind of home remedy in the Amish health arsenal. By the way, if you're liking this video, if you don't mind, just give it a quick like. That'll be much appreciated. Thanks. Number 3, folk healing, powwowing, sympathy curing, Brauche. This is pretty uncommon, but it's out there. This is probably the most controversial, the most obscure. It has a bit of an element of the mystical or the supernatural or the superstitious around it. Amish friend who's in a more progressive church asked him about this. He just kind of laughed about it. He kind of joked about it. So it's not something that he took seriously, and a lot of Amish are not going to be doing these things. So what am I talking about? Kind of practices that don't necessarily have any scientific basis. Using words, terms, and physical manipulations to achieve healing. So an example of this is the practice known as pain pulling. Karen Johnson Weiner describes this in her book, New York Amish. This is a practice found among the very plain Swartzentruber Amish. She writes that pain pulling is considered extremely hard work. And so not everyone can do this. It's believed that this skill or this ability runs in families. So if someone has like stomach pain, for example, it basically involves several people holding hands, one of them touching the person which is in pain to draw the pain out. The pain then passes through the line of people and then into the ground via a copper wire. According to another researcher, Brauche is a practice that may be favored to treat babies who cannot express what is bothering them. So again, this is quite a minority practice, so I want to stress that. This is not something that Amish are doing, across the board or very commonly, but among the very plainest groups, it is practiced to some degree. Number 4, multi-level health supplement marketing. If you go into an Amish store, like a variety store, you'll often see shelves of supplement pills and some different kinds of health enhancing or purportedly health enhancing supplements. Multi-level health marketing depends on selling usually to other people that you know. So this kind of works pretty well with the Amish, because if you think about it, in Amish culture, there's a lot of weight put to what others in the community are doing, others in your family, other respected members of the community. If your uncle had some ailments and he took a supplement for it, and now he's feeling better, and that carries a lot of weight. People tend to follow the similar practices of their family members. Trusted source of information, right? And that's pretty important in Amish culture. So these multi-level marketing businesses can actually fit pretty well there. And of course you sell it to other people or your family, and the person who sells it gets a percentage of the money back. That's the business model. So testimonials are pretty strong. Word of mouth is pretty strong among the Amish. I was even a customer of an Amish multi-level marketer, for a short time. It was actually an Amishman that I met in Ohio. He sold me a product called Body Balance. Okay, and this was like a liquid solution you would pour out like a capsule. That was actually for joint health. I think my knees were bothering me at the time, and I came across Jonas one day. I was selling books, and so I think I gave my book demonstration, and I can't remember if they bought or not, but being a good multi-level marketer that he was, he showed me his Body Balance line of products. I think I ended up buying a couple bottles from him. Did it help my knee? Well, my knees are still working, I guess, so I don't know, probably didn't hurt. It kind of depends on testimonials as well, right? So sometimes you'll see advertisements for health supplements in Amish publications. So this is, again, kind of like a business and a health practice. Supplements are pretty popular with the Amish, and multi-level marketing is one way they get sold and distributed. Finally, number 5, home birth. Quite common practice among the Amish. Some Amish will give birth in hospitals, but a lot of them will have their babies at home, or some will have them at a birthing center. And a birthing center is kind of like something in between like a home birth or like a more conventional hospital setting. So it's basically a center you go to, and there are midwives there. There may be a doctor there or on call. Many Amish do have their babies at home, probably more common among the more plain Amish, but it's also something seen among the more progressive Amish too, so it's something you kind of see across Amish society. Why do they have them at home? Well, there's a couple reasons. One is simply the comfort. If you're non-Amish, if you have 1, 2 children, that's one thing, but if you're Amish and you're having 6, 8, 10, 12 children, the Amish have a lot of experience in this department. They find home births to be quite appealing, and it's also the expense, because a home birth is considerably less expensive than a birth in a conventional hospital. So you have a combination of things there that make home births appealing to the Amish, right? They like to have their children at home in that kind of Amish plain setting, rather than often kind of like a sterile hospital. That doesn't mean that Amish don't have babies in hospitals. For example, an Amish mother may have her first baby in the hospital and then have later children at home. If there's a potential problem pregnancy that might need some additional level of care, they may be more likely to have the baby in the hospital. There are midwives that cater to the Amish. There have been some Amish people that do this. A nice account of this was in the book House Calls and Hitching Posts, about the career of Dr. Elton Lehman, who was a country doctor who practiced in Wayne County, kind of the homes in Wayne County community. That's kind of about his general practice, but it also has stories about one particularly well-known Amish midwife. Her name was Bill Barb Hostetler, and Bill would be, I think it was her husband's name. As I mentioned earlier, Amish have nicknames, and so that was kind of a way to tell her apart from the other Barb Hostetlers in the community. So she's the one married to Bill. So home birth, maybe not super common among non-Amish, but among the Amish it is quite common. I often see where people can kind of get to know their home community quite well, or their local Amish community, and then they can assume that that's the way that Amish do things everywhere, which is a pretty big mistake, because there's a lot of variety across the Amish and the way they do things. So sometimes I hear, well, these are not the real Amish, because the real Amish, I live near them and they don't use that technology, right? So, well, actually, no, they're still Amish. It's just a different way of being Amish. This healthcare topic is a good illustration. At this point, you see a wide variety of Amish approaches to health and wellness. Thanks. See you next time.